Welcome, everybody, to the UFC 245 post show. I'm John Pollock, along with Phil Chertok, a man that just told me off the air that you know what UFC needs, John? Pay-per-views that have 5 title fights instead of just 3. Why don't we just make them all title fights? Maybe the whole card could be title fights one day.
5-round fights, you know? You could just...
I don't like this just 3. What does 3 settle? I mean, 5 is the definitive answer at the end of who is the winner, who is the loser.
Precisely. It's the fight in an octagon, so why not make it 8 rounds? 8 rounds, 8 fights.
To the death. I mean, I don't have too much to complain about this card, but I'm just going to put it out there that, Phil, you and I just watched a sporting event for 8 hours in succession.
Don't remind me, John. Don't remind me.
Yeah, I'm looking. 8 hours. I mean, if you tuned in just before 6:15, which was the first fight on the East Coast.
Well, okay, now to be fair, we do this for the people, right? Like, if it was merely, I was happening to, I wanted to see this event, I was not going to be tuning in at 6:15 to see the
I'm just saying that
fights.
If you're a completist, which most of us are, do you tune into I don't know, if I sit down to watch a basketball game, I'm probably going to sit down at the beginning of the first quarter. But I guess there's many who will tune in the fourth quarter. That's all they.
I love tuning into sporting events and like football, second half football. I love it. It's like, oh, perfect. The score is established. There's already a strategy. It's like, okay, somebody has set this up nicely for me.
I'm afraid to make small talk given how late it is right now. But my one and only question before we get into this card: how is your Christmas?
Why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid, John?
Because
what are you afraid of?
Because I have to wake up in about 4.5 hours. That is why, and I've also got to upload this show afterwards. So that is on me. I'm the old man here. Phil's going to be going out partying as soon as this show is done.
Oh, clearly, yes, definitely, yeah. That's top of order.
How's your Christmas shopping?
I have done virtually none of it, which is great, but I don't really do a lot of it. I don't shop a lot for people.
Oh,
so. Yeah, I'm like, there's a few select people who I get gifts from, and I usually take care of that. So yeah.
Well, you give us a gift every month by joining us.
Oh, that's sweet.
Your presence is our present.
I'm happy to give it.
Well, let's move on as Phil is blushing from all the fanfare that he has out there among the post-wrestling community. UFC 245 from the T-Mobile Arena. 8 hours ago, it kicked off on Fight Pass. I'm just going to quickly go over the results from the Fight Pass, and Phil, I'll throw it over to you if you had any strong thoughts on any of the performances. We kicked things off in the middleweight division with Punahele Soriano defeating Oscar Pihota by knockout at 3:17 of the first round, landed this brutal left hand. Soriano showed a ton of power, and that was really the story of this fight. Jessica Ai defeated Viviane Araujo by unanimous decision. All 3 judges scored it 29-28. I had the same score, but the bigger story going into this was Jessica Ai missing weight by 5 pounds. She came in at 131 pounds, and this was a flyweight fight, and she explained afterwards that she miscalculated something and was trying new things and apologized for missing weight. But that was a big miss and got fined 30% of her purse for that miss. Brandon Moreno defeated Kai Kara France, a teammate of Israel Adesanya and Alexander Volkanovski, who we will talk about later. Moreno getting the unanimous decision victory, scores of 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28. And I thought what was maybe one of the more notable performers on the undercard, Chase Hooper, 20-year-old Chase Hooper, who was born on September 13th, 1999. Holy Christ. There are people that were born when I was in high school that are now fighting in the UFC. I have never felt so old than when Chase Hooper was introduced here, and he proceeded to finish a really tough guy in Daniel Tamor, overcame some early adversity, and then ended up working to mount here, delivering strikes, applied a triangle, and finished him with punches with the triangle, with the mounted triangle, and said that he's going for M&Ms for his celebration because the man cannot drink.
No, he cannot drink in the United States. He's 20 years old. The age of, alcohol consumption is 21. And
not only can he not drink, he's not even on the brink of being able to drink. He's got to wait till the next school year begins in September that this man can drink again or drink, period.
Well, I mean, he can vote in the meantime, I suppose, or, join the military.
Well, would you vote for this guy getting a performance of the night bonus?
Definitely. Spectacular performance. He has this crazy huge frame, and he used it to just completely dominate position on Tamor.
He's a 6'1" featherweight.
It was a very, very impressive performance.
Yeah, 6'1" this guy is at featherweight, so just an enormous guy. And I was very impressed with this guy. Very calm under pressure here when he ate this overhand right from Tamor, who's again like a really good fighter at 145 pounds. So an interesting prospect to watch, a very young one. Then we went on to the televised prelims. Matt Brown is out of retirement and drew Ben Saunders on Saturday night, and they had a rather entertaining fight. In the first round, Ben Saunders just worked off of his back and was going for a triangle and just was constantly adjusting back and forth. And Joe Rogan was very concerned that this guy was going to blow out his legs and be exhausted. And Brown kind of just held him down, held his arms, but I still thought Saunders did enough to win this round. In the second, it was Matt Brown standing and just drilling this guy with strikes. He hit a head kick that stunned Saunders, and Saunders is just constantly going to his back. Brown rocked him, and then as Saunders goes to the back, Brown nails him with this right elbow and finishes him with strikes on top. So Matt Brown comes out of retirement, had Mark Coleman in his corner, and gets the victory here.
Yeah, it was nice to see Brown get the win. I mean, it was a perfect opponent, another veteran guy. I agreed that Ben Saunders, I thought he won the round just by controlling the position so dominantly, but it was pretty clear early in the second that wasn't going to be enough. Brown was, he used that veteran savvy to, stay calm in those positions and do damage and eventually end up with the TKO. Maybe we can finally get that fight with Carlos Condit.
Yeah. Better late than never, I guess, at this point between those two.
I don't know. It seems like at least an option. Like, you don't want to see him put in there with like a real top guy, right?
Matt Brown said afterwards that he wants to fight on that card in Columbus, Ohio, which is at the end of March. That's going to feature Francis Ngannou and Jairzinho Rosenstruck. And I remember in 2008 going to UFC 83, I believe, at that same arena in Columbus, Ohio. And it was the card headlined by Anderson Silva and Dan Henderson. And on that card, I remember them introducing Mark Coleman, who will probably be in Matt Brown's corner if he gets on this card, and announcing that Mark Coleman in 2008 was going to fight Brock Lesnar in the summer. And I just thought, oh my God, what are they doing to Mark Coleman? And
did they announce that? What?
They announced it, and he ended up having to pull out of the fight, and that's where Heath Herring got selected to replace him to fight Brock Lesnar.
Okay, that does ring a bell. That does ring a bell. Okay.
I was just fearful of Mark Coleman. I was like, they are just feeding this guy to Brock Lesnar, and Mark Coleman would have fights after that. So anyway,
he had competitive fights after that.
He did. He had that fight with Shogun, in 2009 where those two were just completely gassed. But, yeah, he had, several more fights in his career post, 2008, just not with Brock Lesnar. Omari Akhmetov defeated Ian Hainish by unanimous decision, straight scores of 29-28. Akhmetov winning the first two rounds. Hainish, I thought, winning the third round. Not a very memorable fight here. It was Akhmetov who just the superior striking in the first two rounds, and Hainish in the third round. I think it was more so Akhmetov was really tired, and Hainish was able to get a takedown, land some strikes on top, and be able to get a round in here.
Yeah, I agree. Hainish, he did a good job to, kind of take the fight in his direction towards the end of the second round and third round. But, these fights are very short. So, you've only got 3 rounds. You can't wait to make your move. And, Akhmetov did enough enough in 1 and 2 to win the fight and, move up.
I sometimes will say when a guy is on a winning streak that he has quietly gone unbeaten for a certain stretch. Well, I think that Omari Akhmetov officially has the quietest streak in the UFC because this man has not lost a fight since April of 2016. And I would venture to guess that there are many fight fans that order every pay-per-view that could not pick Omari Akhmetov out of a lineup.
I would agree with you. I might not be able to pick him out of the lineup. Well, not anymore because he did make a statement, at least, to some degree, because, it was a big night of fights. He won and, it was a tough fight. It wasn't a bad fight. It was a little underwhelming on a pretty exciting night, I guess.
Caitlin Vieira and Irina Aldana were next in women's bantamweight action. Vieira has not fought since March of 2018, and she had quietly ascended the ranks of the women's bantamweight division. And her last win to date this one was a split decision over Kat Zingano. So that really puts into perspective. And was favored in this fight. She was the betting favorite coming into this fight. And Aldana early on landed this right hand, and then Vieira hit her own, and then they got into this exchange where Aldana rocked her with this left hand that just drops Vieira down. This was a brutal knockout at 4:51 of the first round. Irene Aldana getting the knockout victory and has now won 5 of 6 fights. So she is certainly, when you're looking at a pretty bare division when it comes to finding contenders to fight Amanda Nunes, I think Irene Aldana has just leapfrogged to the top of that contenders list.
Yeah, it's fairly slim pickings at this point, but it was a good performance by Aldana, who used good footwork. I did think she was taking some shots, but she landed that beautiful left and then followed it up with an even nicer straight right that really flatlined Vieira. So, I don't know if I'd say she's ready for a title shot, but, definitely ready for a more, notable opponent.
It's kind of process of elimination at this point at bantamweight and featherweight. Just who is a warm body that has amassed, minimum 2 wins in a row. Come on down. That is essentially the progression of challengers at this point.
I'd rather see Amanda Nunes fight, who's the Canadian girl that lost to Cyborg?
Felicia Spencer.
Yeah, there you go. I'd rather see her fight her.
So it's slim pickings is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Anyway.
We will see what is next, for her. Then we move on and we had, in the featured prelim bout, Jeff Neal versus Mike Perry. And Jeff Neal, I think he's quickly become maybe the most successful Dana White Contender Series prospect that has gotten signed. He came into this fight 4-0 since joining the UFC. Recently beaten Bilal Muhammad and Nico Price this year alone. So this was his 3rd fight this year. He hit a head kick that stunned Perry, and Neal just went into kill mode. He unloaded on Perry, putting him against a cage, dropping him down for the stoppage. This is the first time Mike Perry has ever been stopped, and this came at 1:30 of the first round. So a very, very impressive win for Jeff Neal at 170 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, he got right to it. He landed this high kick, followed it up, and looked sharp as ever. And I mean, you mentioned his other wins this year, Nico Price and Bilal Muhammad. Those are top tier opponents. So, he is, really set himself up to have a big year. They talked about, I think it was Daniel Cormier mentioned matching him up against somebody like, Ponzinibbio. Mm-hmm. That sounds perfect. I know Ponzinibbio would like a more, higher ranked person, but, I'd love to see that fight.
Yeah, so there were some really spectacular performances on this undercard. This was pretty entertaining fights leading into the pay-per-view.
I agree. It was, the evening went rolling. Like, I was sort of worried. I was like, okay, I got a pot of coffee on. I had like a pack of Red Bull. I was like, okay, but I did have my little coffee, but I didn't even have one Red Bull. So I made it through. I think I sound sane.
4 hours in, you're at the midway part of this card and you're thinking, wow, that was an easy 4 hours. Let's do another 4. So here we go on to the pay-per-view. And this was a very stacked pay-per-view. I don't know about you, Phil, but I was really looking forward to this card. As soon as it was finalized, like this card just looked dynamite from several weeks out, which you don't always typically get now, where we're getting weekly fight cards and you don't really get that anticipation, but I did sense that for this show.
I did sense some anticipation for the show, in that, like some colleagues of mine were really talking about it leading up. Me personally, I just had a lot going on in the last week, so I wasn't really thinking about it too much. But then today, even today, I had, just a bunch of stuff to do in the morning, and when I finally got time, I sort of realized, it dawned on me, it was like, whoa, there's some really amazing fights and fighters on this card. And by the time it got to the main event, I had like that big event butterfly that you sometimes get. At least I think other fans sometimes get.
Well, Urijah Faber might have had a few butterflies as he was approaching this fight with Petr Yan, 13-1, 26-year-old bantamweight here. And Faber came into this. He was a big underdog. Yan was listed as a minus 550 favorite. And early on, Faber did land this like step-in knee, and that was one of his high points of the fight. He went for a clinch and then ate a right hand, and this was when Yan just started his striking. He was very measured, getting his timing in the first round. Then into the second, he's using his jab a lot more frequently. He drops Faber, and Yan then goes from behind. Faber, though, gets up, and Yan drops him with this elbow. And this elbow shot just lacerates Faber. He comes up to the point that the referee, Keith Peterson, needs to check on him, and he's got this hematoma coming out of his eye that just looks terrible. And they restart in the same position. Faber is able to get to his feet, a 10-8 round, and then the third round begins, and as they break from a clinch, Faber gets head kicked and just drops down to the mat, and the fight is over. Petr Yan, your winner in pretty brutal fashion here. Big statement victory for him. 43 seconds into the third round by knockout.
Oh yeah, it was pretty savage. He hurt Urijah bad twice before the finish. There was this weird moment where he hurt him really bad, and then Urijah was able to get up, and he was sort of like bloody and like waved to his family, and then actually landed a crisp shot on Yan that sent him back. But other than that, and the knee you mentioned, it was all Yan in a really technical, clinical performance that really sets him up as the number one contender in the division.
Yeah, it was really like a scene out of a Rocky Balboa movie where Faber waved to his wife and daughter, and then got up and landed like this punch that Phil mentioned, but it was not a Hollywood ending for Urijah Faber. I wonder if this is an ending period for Urijah Faber's career after this. He's 40. Do you see, like, this to me was just a fight. This is not how I would have been booking Urijah Faber. There's a place for Urijah Faber. It's not against a 26-year-old killer when he's 40 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as harsh on it as you are. Like, he was in the fight. Like, it wasn't like he was completely outclassed here. It was just, I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. I think there's still some opportunity for him to fight. Like, if he waits around a year, a returning TJ Dillashaw will be around. That's a pretty big fight for him. So I didn't have too much of a problem, and it really elevated Yan, who, you know, he beat Jimmy Rivera, who's a very tough guy, but nobody really knows that. and knows who Rivera is. So beating Faber on a huge night is a statement. So I think I was all right with it.
Yan, after the fight, challenged Henry Cejudo and called him a triple clown.
He did the best with what, the limited English he had. He called his shot. He shot a shot. Can't fault the guy.
I think he should be in line. It's a division that's kind of just going in circles right now as Cejudo is injured. And which title is this guy even going to defend in his next fight? Is he going to be fighting Joseph Benavidez? Is he going to be fighting at bantamweight? Certainly, we're starting to get to the point where this division could have an interim title introduced, and I would say Yan would be one half of that equation if they were to put together an interim title fight.
I mean, he would have to be. I mean, at one point tonight, it looked like maybe Jose Aldo was setting himself up to be the next title challenger. Didn't quite materialize. But Petr Yan is definitely number one in line.
Marlon Moraes, Jose Aldo was next, and there was a lot of scrutiny about Jose Aldo cutting down to 135 pounds. He made the weight at 136, said it was one of the best cuts of his career, and Megan O'Leary informed us that Jose Aldo had told her that the old Jose Aldo is dead, and I'm going to be bantamweight champion. So, Jose Aldo marking his new territory here at 135 pounds, and he came out and he looked really good in this fight. I think he, myself included, were blown away by how good he looked at 135 pounds. I thought the two split the first two rounds. I thought Moraes just came out much like the Henry Cejudo fight, where he had a tremendous first round and then kind of came back down to earth in the second. And this is where Aldo was being very smart with body shots, landed this great combination, and also using his jab very effectively throughout the second round. In the third, there were all of these jabs from Marlon Moraes, and Aldo was the one definitely controlling the center, and Moraes was circling around him, but I thought this was a really close round, and people can debate where this went. I thought Moraes, even though he was on the outside, I don't think that doesn't play a huge factor for me. I still thought he outlanded Jose Aldo, and I gave him, I shouldn't say greatly outlanded him, but enough to win the round. So I went with Marlon Moraes, but this is really a coin toss. I don't think you can argue who gets the decision here.
No, I don't think you can really argue. I had it the same way. I had it Moraes, Aldo, Moraes, but even the second round I thought was a bit of a coin flip, even though Aldo has established himself better in that one. And I agreed that obviously he looked much better. I thought even when they were cutting to him prior to the fight, I was sort of pleasantly surprised at how full he looked. He kind of looked like his 145 pound self, which was not at all what he looked like on Friday. So, it was a pleasant surprise to see him perform so well. He didn't get the decision, but it was a super close fight. Moraes suggested that they run it back. Why not? Do a 5-rounder. That could headline a fight night.
It certainly could. I thought that this fight really rejuvenated Jose Aldo. Yes, it's a loss on his record, but to me, this was a moral victory for him in just how good he looked at 135 pounds, and it opens the door for a lot of interesting fights for him at this new weight class. So I would not view this as a negative for Jose Aldo. I thought this was a career positive for him because I think there was this real question mark. I think ever since the Conor McGregor loss of where his career was going to go, and he is showing, an ability to beat a lot of quality featherweights, but was he going to be able to regain that form that he had pre-McGregor? And here was Jose Aldo, I think, finding a new home at bantamweight. That certainly there is a demand to see him against other bantamweights or even the rematch with Marlon Moraes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities, and it adds a little new interest into the division. So it's great. And as the commentators mentioned, he's only 33, so I know he has got a lot of miles on him, but maybe we can get quite a few more Jose Aldo great fights.
Amanda Nunes versus Germaine de Randamie was our first of 3 title fights for the women's bantamweight title. And I was thinking, man, Phil, we're going to have a short night here. I thought this first round, this is going to be a sign of things to come. Amanda Nunes was going to finish off Germaine de Randamie because she just steamrolled de Randamie. She nailed this right hand over the top, took her down, and is just nailing her with strikes as she applies a guillotine that looks super deep, and it looks like de Randamie is going to tap, but she survives it. So Nunes just goes to ground and pound. She then goes for an arm triangle. De Randamie survives that. She outlanded de Randamie 39-9 in this first round. A dominant round.
Yeah, it looked pretty one-sided, although at the end of the round, de Randamie was landing some up kicks, and Nunes did slow a little bit from all that output. So it did seem like de Randamie could make a run for it there.
The second was de Randamie's best round. I thought she won this round. She just got an ability to strike. She landed this huge head kick on her and then started landing knees from the clinch. Nunes got her against the fence and ended up on top of her. But I had de Randamie winning this round. And then Nunes just relied on wrestling for the rest of this fight. She was able to take down de Randamie at the start of the ensuing rounds and work on top. And that was pretty much the story of these final 3 rounds, which I thought Nunes won 3-4 and 5, along with a 10-8 in the first. So I had this fight 49-45 for Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, I had it almost the same. I did not give the first round a 10-8, but otherwise I scored it exactly the same. Yeah, it was a good, gritty veteran performance by Nunes. Going into this fight, I actually thought that de Randamie had a pretty good chance. If she could circle well and stay on the outside, she would have the better kickboxing. She has a ton of experience in kickboxing. And Nunes tried to strike with her. And then when Nunes realized that she couldn't, not that she couldn't, but that she would have such a bigger advantage in the grappling, she just kept going there. And it was the right move. And she got the win despite a pretty horrible stand-up in the second round.
That's right. Yes, we had a lot of comedy from Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier about Keith Peterson's stand-ups on this card. At one point, they were openly betting each other $5 if Keith Peterson was going to stand them up or not.
Yeah, and he did not in that instance. So,
just looking at the contenders here, so Caitlin Vieira was ranked number 2 going into this fight behind Germaine de Randamie, so she kind of is out of the running there. Holly Holm is set to fight Raquel Pennington. They are number 3 and 6. Then you've got Aspen Ladd, who just had that come from behind victory last week. Juliana Pena, Yana Kunitskaya, who also just fought, Marion Renault, Sarah McMahon, and then Irene Aldana is ranked 10th. So maybe Aspen Ladd is your leading contender, unless you go with the winner of Holm and Pennington.
No, you can't go with either of them. That doesn't make any sense.
What makes sense right now in this division?
What makes sense? I don't know, but have her fight. Who I said have her fight at 145. Why does it have to be at that division?
Well, do you want me to read you the featherweight rankings?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Champion Amanda Nunes, no rankings. Nobody is listed here.
How could Felicia Spencer not be ranked?
That's how little they think of this division. They have not even ranked them. I know you're very high on Felicia Spencer here. She is coming off the loss to Cyborg. So
look, she's just a tough girl, and I just think that it's a fight that could be competitive versus some of these other girls where I think she would steamroll them. And look, if the UFC wants to book these fights and people want to see them, okay, sure, she can be like the dominant Mike Tyson type champion, but I just don't really have any interest in seeing a lot of those fights. And the girls, who are pretty good, she's already beaten. So.
Yeah, it's the the problem that they have with this division. I don't think you have any giant fights that are pending here.
I mean, maybe by the end of the year they can do Shevchenko again, right? Like that's a possibility.
I think they'll eventually do the third fight between them. Yeah. Because I think you're running into that same issue at flyweight as well. I don't think many are favoring Caitlin Chukagian to beat Shevchenko, and you're going to be in the same predicament. So those two finding each other again, very likely, I would assume. All right, our second title fight, Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski for the featherweight title. Volkanovski had a great game plan early on of just brutalizing Max Holloway's lead left leg and eventually forcing him around the third round to have to switch stances. And so Volkanovski said, cool, I'll now go after your other leg. And he was just annihilating with leg kicks and attacking the calf and just putting on a lot of pressure with his striking as well. I had Volkanovski winning the first 3 rounds. Then Holloway, at the end of the third round, he starts to just get reckless. He is throwing Hail Mary shots and not having any success. So in the fourth, he comes out, he's much more conservative, but he starts having success with an uppercut and going to the body. And I thought this was a round that he edged past Volkanovski. We go to the 5th round. At this point, John Anik is mentioning that Holloway has absorbed 68 leg kicks, which sound brutal. This was a very close round. I think this was kind of a coin toss round. I did lean Holloway, but I had Volkanovski win in the fight 48-47. What were your thoughts on the fight and Volkanovski's strategy?
So I thought that Volkanovski fought just an absolutely amazing fight. He just was prepared in every area. I had him winning 4 rounds to 1 with the only round of difference was that I gave him round 5. But as you mentioned, it was a coin toss of a round. So, but the bigger story was just really how well he prepared for this fight. He was prepared for Holloway in all of his, domains. And, the way that he was able to shut down his movement and force him to change stances, it was really, really impressive. The cardio, the output that, he was talking to him in the middle of the fight. It was a really entertaining performance. And Holloway, he didn't disappoint either. He fought the way that you would expect from him. He was a game champion. He fought hard in 4 and 5. You can make a case that he won 4 and 5. But Volkanovski really, it was kind of a masterclass in MMA in a lot of ways.
It was. I thought he had a great strategy to beat Max Holloway. Holloway afterwards said he's 28, he's young, he will be back. It opens up this division, I think, for a lot of interesting fights. Mainly, I'm kind of interested in where Max Holloway goes after this more so than Volkanovski. I mean, you can go with Zabit, you could go many different ways, but personally, I'm kind of curious where Max Holloway goes next. I don't see them going to an automatic rematch, and this kind of opens them up to have some 3-round fights, which may not be the worst thing for Max Holloway, who has had a lot of big fights over the last couple of years. I could see them going to the rematch because he's such a long reigning champion. Mm-hmm. They could do it in New Zealand, which would be cool because that's closer to Hawaii as well, or in Australia, where he's sort of where I think that's where he's from. Him and Adesanya being paired together would be great if they could pull that off next year.
Yeah,
2 teammates.
And the only thing with Holloway fighting a 3-round fight is he fights in main events so much that. Even if he were to, even if they give him a contender fight, I still see him being in a 5-round fight. So, but he's the best in 5-round fights. That's to his advantage, a 5-round fight. So, I don't know. I could see him getting a rematch. I could see him moving up in weight. There's a lot of fights for him at 155. He's still super young. And if he doesn't get the rematch right now, a couple other fights and then a rematch, sure. I mean, it was a competitive fight.
Yeah, it's funny with Holloway. I'd be really interested to see him and Yair Rodriguez or him and Chan Sung Jung. And with Volkanovski, like, I don't even know what the fight is, that you go next. If it's not Holloway, there isn't the obvious contender. And if you're looking at something like Zabit, I think that's really location specific. Like if you were to do that fight in Russia, okay, I get it. Or if you were to do it in New Zealand or Australia, but to do that do that fight somewhere in the US, I don't think that fight's going to really capture a lot of people's imagination.
Well, you have this big platform that was a launching pad for Volkanovski to the audience. He could be underneath another big event, and you don't sell his fights right away. You wait a little bit, you build them off of some other stars, and then maybe you do a big fight in home country, and we'll see. But it's a little bit tough to figure out contenders. It's a little bit tough to figure out who could even compete with this guy, because he seems to just have such a read on the octagon. And he said in his post-fight interview, he's got the fight IQ. I mean, that's clear as day. Mm-hmm. Like it's pretty amazing. And I've been very high on Volkanovski since I first saw him in the UFC. I was impressed with what he did, but this was the fight that, even though I really liked him and thought he was super deserving of this title shot, this was the fight of all the 3 title fights that I thought was least likely for the title to change hands. So, really awesome performance, kind of virtuoso.
Yeah, he was excellent. Do you see Chan Sung Jung and Frankie Edgar next weekend? Does that have any title implications for the winner?
It could. I mean, I think Volkanovski called out Frankie Edgar, and it seems like the UFC likes to throw Frankie Edgar into title shots. So if Frankie Edgar comes away with the win, maybe. Chan Sung Jung, he definitely, I mean, he's not really at a title shot yet, but he's a super popular fighter and super exciting. So if he gets a win, I wouldn't say he's going to get a title shot, but he'd be close. He wouldn't be too far off.
Yeah, he has the loss to Yair as well from last year, that final second stoppage as well. So I would more so be looking at if they were just going to take someone like a Frankie and just for name value alone put him with Volkanovski. Although, God, in my head, that size discrepancy seems enormous between those two.
I'm okay with putting Zabit in there right now because
he's probably like, if you're not going Holloway, he's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, look, it's, if he can't get his output issues together, that's on him, right? We'll give you your shot. We beat all these guys. You keep calling out people. You want the top of the division. Okay. So you get a title shot. You're really exciting, but you got to deal with this monster who can go hard for 5 rounds. So I think it's a pretty exciting fight. I think that would be a really good co-main event on a name with bigger names above.
Yeah, that's how I would promote it, because it's not 2 big names, but competitively, like, that's a fascinating fight between those 2.
Yeah.
So interesting stuff going on at featherweight, and we will see what happens next with Max Holloway. But then to the main event, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington for the UFC welterweight title. And Colby Covington for the second fight in a row coming out to Kurt Angle's theme.
It's fun. I like it.
It works for him. And, well, we got one question answered immediately because neither guy was going to attempt to wrestle with the other. This was going to be these two standing and trading for the entire fight. There was not one takedown attempt in this until... No, I don't think there was one attempt. Was there in this fight?
There was an attempt by Colby's corner to convince him to try to wrestle.
Okay, that doesn't go on the stats, Phil.
Okay. All right.
Corner 0 for 1 between round 4 and 5. So early in the first round, man, these two are just like winging it at one another. Colby's getting some really big, powerful shots, and then he flies at him with this knee. You can see Usman trying to go for the body. Colby continued this in the second where he stunned Usman with a right hand, then followed with a left. And you're just watching these guys just throw at one another that you're just thinking one of these guys is just going to try and wrestle here to navigate this game plan. But no, they just kept going at it. They just jabbed the hell out of each other here in the second round. Colby then rocks him with another right hand. After 2 rounds, how did you have it, Phil?
After 2 rounds, I had it 10-9 in the first Colby and then 10-9 Kamaru in the second. I noted that both were just super close rounds. It felt like Kamaru had more power and was landing more consistently, but then Covington would have these flurries where he would really sort of shock Kamaru. And this would happen in the fight. Like it might have happened like 7 times in the fight. It was kind of crazy. But even with that, Kamaru would always, come back and then land some big shots. So crazy hard to score. I mean, they were critical of the scorecard that said that this fight was 3-1 for Colby. That, although I had it the flip, you can make a case. There were 3 rounds that were super, super close, 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah, I had it 2-0 for Colby after 2, but that second round, I was really wavering. Like, I thought that could have gone either way for me. So I thought, yeah, you had some really tough rounds to score here. I wasn't too critical about the judges' cards going into the end there. Third round, this was to me when Usman started to make his biggest impression. He's landing a lot of right hands, and more importantly, he's focusing on the body a lot, and those are starting to pile up. Then he's connecting with the left hands as well. This is when we got our first eye poke from Covington that just looked nasty in the replay. Into the fourth round we go. Maybe the most notable mention came in between rounds as Colby tells his corner that he thinks he broke his jaw. The announcers tee up the replay, and we watch in slow motion as Colby Covington's jaw just gets ricocheted in this octagon, and it would not surprise me at all that this man has a broken jaw and made rounds 4 and 5 that much more stunning.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular, and it explains sort of what happened in round 3, because in round 3, his output went to 0. Mm-hmm. It was really shocking. And I think it was just more mental. He just started focusing on that jaw rather than what he needed to do. And then he went back to his corner, and then, he told his corner, yeah, my jaw's broken. And they kind of just ignored him because what are they going to do? Right? It's like, you got to fight through it. So that reset him, and then came out in round 4 and had a good round.
The fourth round, he's doing way better than someone you would expect has a potential broken jaw. He landed an uppercut. It was like Colby was landing the bigger strikes. Usman was in terms of volume was outlanding Covington. So, I mean, scores could be all over the place here. After 4 rounds, I had it even. What did you have?
I had it 3-1 for Kamaru.
So
2, 3, 4.
Cool. So the 5th round, Usman's going to the head and body, and then he lands this big right hand, and he's going to his jab. He's following with these big shots, and then he finally drops Covington with a right hand. Covington gets up. He gets dropped a second time, and Kamaru is all on top of him and finishes him with hammer fists at 4 minutes, 10 seconds of the 5th round. Awesome fight. I think that this is a contender for fight of the year. Just a fantastic fight.
Yeah, it was nonstop action, huge shots, both guys rock, both guys showing heart, lots of drama. It was really, really spectacular. These guys, I mean, there was this element, leading up to this fight, they had pretty much the same record with only one defeat each to a guy that the other beat. So it was really even and competitive on paper, and it really played out that way. And, the difference was that in the 5th round, Kamaru really just dug deep and found a way to get it done.
So going into the 5th round, the judges had it. One judge had it 39-37 for Usman, one had it 39-37 for Covington, and one had it 38-38 tied, which is what I had. So this was a very, very close fight going into this last fight. This was just an incredible fight, one that I think you could certainly run back at some point. And I don't know if people were necessarily expecting this to be a great fight going in. I think quite the opposite, to be honest, that this could have been a really dull affair between these two, that sometimes when you have these heated grudges, it's guys come in and they're so tentative because they don't want to make a mistake, because there's so much ego involved. And this was anything but. These guys just swung for the fences and had just not to say they were being completely reckless or anything, but this was just a non-stop striking affair for 5 rounds. And I think that this and the Adesanya-Gastelum fights are going to be the ones kind of debated for fight of the year this year.
Yeah, both of those were tremendous. I did expect this type of fight from Covington because that it was similar to what he had done in the Dos Anjos, but more recently the Robbie Lawler fight, but we never really seen Kamaru Usman do this. And so for him to sort of fight at that same pace that Covington does with the striking, I mean, he's always shown great pace with the wrestling, but to do that with the striking and ultimately outpace Colby, it was extremely impressive. And yeah, it was a fight to remember.
Some notes here from Brett Okamoto of ESPN. Dana White says he wants to book a rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway in Australia next.
Okay. Sure.
He says after tonight, Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal is a big title fight and he'd like to make it. Do you like that direction?
Yeah, I do. I think, one thing about that, what was leading up to that fight, the problem was Masvidal calling, him snoozman or whatever. And, but, there's nothing, that was an incredibly exciting performance. So, I think there will be some interest in that.
And then what else here? Dana also says Henry Cejudo called him and said that Jose Aldo won that fight and he wants to fight him next.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. Really?
White told Henry apparently, cool. Says he didn't know if he would honor Cejudo's request. I thought Aldo won that fight, so I'm going to fight him next.
Okay.
And Dana adds that he thought Urijah Faber looked good early, but Yan is a nasty guy, said that he thinks Faber can still fight if he wants to, but doesn't see much reason for him to do it. So there you go.
Another interesting note is I'm pretty sure that Max Holloway became the first person in UFC history to land more than 2,000 significant strikes in a career in the octagon.
Wow.
Yes.
Have you been tabulating them since
No. So they displayed a statistic before the fight that he had like 1,937, and he's the all-time leader. So it wouldn't take that much more to hit the 2,000 mark, and he's the leader. So he would be the first person to achieve that task.
We also have, so the attendance was 16,811, gate of $4,041,119.14. Fight of the night, Usman Covington, no surprise there. Performance of the night, Petr Yan and Irene Aldana. Chase Hooper, sorry kid. What's he going to do with a bonus anyway? He's 20.
He's
buy M&Ms?
I was gonna say, but he'll be okay. He'll be okay. They're gonna feature him in a nice spot. They can take their time with him, right? Like, no rush. But he's pretty exciting.
So there you go. That was, I thought, a very entertaining UFC 245, their final pay-per-view of the year, and second to last card of the year. Next week, we've got a card that I'm sure you'll be waking up at 2 a.m. to watch the undercard from South Korea, featuring Frankie Edgar, Chan Sung Jung, and Volkan Ozdemir versus Alexander Rakic. Doo-Ho Choi is on this card. He's returning.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, Doo-Ho Choi we haven't seen in a while. I mean, he was really on an upswing, and I think he took some much needed time off. I don't know his opponent, which I like that idea because he was kind of fed to the wolves there.
Charles Jourdain.
Well, I still don't know his opponent.
Well, Phil, the next time you and I will do a show, don't know if this is going to be a big show or not, but I think we should cover it. It will be UFC 246, Conor McGregor, Donald Cerrone, and final question, what are your thoughts on some of the early fights they've announced for 2020? They've we haven't discussed yet, but quite the plethora of fights that they have rolled out so far for the first quarter.
Well, I mean, certainly this McGregor Cowboy event, you put it to me last time to make a prediction if this fight would happen in January, and I said it would. So, I have all sorts of predictions that I made incorrectly that we'll ignore.
Just own the correct ones, and we forget the incorrect ones.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's a card with, I mean, there's nothing else on that card. It's pretty.
The fight that is second from the top is Anthony Pettis against Diego Ferreira. So this is a top heavy card.
And that's also there really, in case, Cowboy gets hurt, right? Like they're going to slot Pettis into the title fight or the panty fight or whatever you want to call it, Yeah,
you would think if something were to happen, though I don't really have any concerns about Cerrone not making it to this fight. I feel if this guy tore his ACL, he would hobble into this fight and just get through it.
Yes, you're probably right. Well, okay, so the announced let's see.
They're talking about Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero, but that's not been announced.
That's fine. I think that's fine. Go ahead.
I like the fight. I have no problem with that fight.
Okay.
I guess this is technically second quarter is Khabib and Tony Ferguson.
I'm gonna zip through some good fights coming up. Okay. You got Dos Anjos versus Chisea. That's a good one coming up in where is that happening? That's on the undercard of in North Carolina, January 25th. Fight night, Blades Dos Anjos. Dos Santos.
Yeah.
Okay. Jones Reyes. Okay. You have Valentina Shevchenko versus Chookagian. Okay. Whatever.
Your real main event. I know you definitely would have been.
Well, I mean, the main event is our Jessica Rabbit version of Valentina Shevchenko. The fiery redhead. I mean, this is a new era upon us. But we've got Derek Lewis on that card fighting Ilir Latifi. Okay. Corey Anderson fighting Jan Blachowicz. No, he isn't. I'm looking at the wrong card. What?
That's the next week.
Oh, is that really happening? Okay.
Yep. That's headlining in Rio Rancho, New Mexico.
Okay. I guess, well, there you go. I mean, that's something.
So you got some fights coming up.
Felder versus Hooker. That's a pretty good, fight coming up.
And they've got, and they made the Ngannou Rosenstruck fight for the end of March in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, that's right. So that's a good one. Yep. Weili Zhang versus, Joanne is, announced. That's one to look forward to. I think that's going to be a great fight. And then, of course, if it comes to pass, is Khabib versus Tony, which they've announced 4 months out, which is a bit unusual.
Yeah. I think that 248 card, that's the March 7th with, Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I'm wondering what else goes on that card. I cannot see that fight headlining a pay-per-view.
No, and it's supposed to be happening in Vegas, and so Vegas demands big names. Would
that be too soon if you could put together Masvidal and Usman, or is that too close?
I mean, it's all up to Masvidal. Like, if it's how much money can you show these guys, right?
If I'm Masvidal, I'm gunning for that Conor fight much more than I'm looking for a Kamaru Usman fight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if that's not a good fight for Masvidal, the Usman fight. I don't know if anyone's a good fight for Usman right now, but man, that to me is just logic that Masvidal is not going to be courting the Usman fight if Conor McGregor is any possibility.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense even for Conor McGregor. I know it's sort of counterintuitive in the sense that he wouldn't have a great chance of winning that fight. But in terms of the amount of money that could be generated, it's the biggest possible fight because they're the biggest stars in the game right now.
All right. Well,
Khabib.
Correct. Well, that's going to bring an end to the show here at 3 a.m. Eastern Time. Phil, you're always a trooper joining me for these post shows. It's always great to have you on to break this down, and a thank you for the entire year of shows. I hope we do it again in 2020, unless I get a breakup text from you. But I've always got a seat here for Phil Chertok.
No, I'll just leave my breakup note as a stocking stuffer for you.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. That's going to wrap things up, everybody. We are going to be back Sunday night following the WWE TLC event that I will bet Phil is not going to be watching.
No, I'm not going to be watching that.
No, that is correct. Are you going to watch any of the Bellator next weekend? 2 cards in Hawaii.
Okay. Well, I honestly don't even know who's on those cards. I mean, it's so horrible. I should keep up with it, I guess. It's just, there's so much. Who's fighting?
Oh, it's way too late to be going to Bellator
yeah,
cards at this time.
Yeah.
Ali Malay McFarlane is fighting. They're flyweight champion.
Yes. Well, that's to be expected because they are in Hawaii. So that's cool that they have events in Hawaii. The UFC
and AJ McKee, Derek Campos. That's part of their featherweight Grand Prix.
Okay, AJ McKee looks really good. So that's worth he's worth watching.
The night before they're doing the Friday and Saturday. On Friday night, Hani Marks versus Josh Barnett is the headliner.
Okay.
These aren't terribly deep cards. Like I'm looking at the main cards. It's, realistically, it's one main card that's been split into 2 cards.
Yeah, it's interesting that the UFC has decided to sort of abandon the New Year's Eve thing. I wonder if maybe because it falls in the middle of the week, they didn't want to have an event in Vegas and have.
I think it was mainly just with ESPN with all their bowl coverage and stuff like that they just wanted to have to do it earlier for promotional purposes. But I always thought that was a good week to run for the UFC, like the post-Christmas pay-per-view that would typically do very well. But
yeah,
it's going to be a quiet period after the South Korea. Let's be honest, not too many people are paying attention. So in theory, they're off until January 18th. With the McGregor fight.
Yeah, the best is when it would line up so that the Saturday would fall on the day before New Year's Eve, because they do it in Vegas. It'd be like a huge, huge event, and people, everyone else is home for the holidays and wants to gather with friends. And so watching a UFC event is the perfect opportunity to do that. So I used to like those events very much as well.
That's when the second Tito Chuck fight fell on. It was the day before New Year's Eve, and that card was just so enormous back in 2006.
Yeah, I think they've had another one as well. That anyway. I mean, let's carry on.
Good night, everybody. From Phil and John. Thank you for listening.